Today's video dedication is for Whiskey Jack. Pantlaza versus the Dragon with a 2-lander and no ramp. This is an ETB deck, so we can't go for a Sakura Tribe Elder with Worldly Tutor or something like that, so have to mulligan on this. Okay, plenty of mana there, so can probably risk getting rid of a land. We will keep, and yeah, I wouldn't have thought we'd see much counter magic against the Dragon, so risk getting rid of the Cavern of Souls as well. We are on the draw, so managed to get into a land. Yeah, nothing to do on turn 1, so getting the shot land tapped. It's noteworthy that Pantlaza does care about dinosaurs in particular entering the battlefield. That's how you get to discover. And this is a general blink deck, so there's plenty of non-dinosaur creatures in the deck, such as Wall of Blossoms with ETB effects. That's why Maskwood Nexus is in here, because we'll be able to turn all of our creatures into dinosaurs. Our opponent missing a land drop is not good. Alright, drawing into a Boseiju. We're not going to be missing lands for quite a while yet. Get down the Wall of Blossoms, just a cantrip, get a card deeper into the library. Alright, and into an Eerie Interlude, protects our board and does some blink shenanigans. Will be good with the Maskwood Nexus in play, although it is noteworthy that we'll only get to discover once on a dinosaur entering with Eerie Interlude. Oh damn, and we drew into Clifftop Retreat there, and apparently I accidentally clicked just as I was drawing into it. I was going to go for Ancient Tomb into Maskwood Nexus there, which would have been a much better play. We're going to have to take a turn off getting that into play now. But it should give our opponent some time to catch up, because he's getting slow tap lands in and missed a turn on getting in his land anyway there. Not sure if that was a misclick on his part, or if he's only just drawn into these lands. Now seeing a Bloom Tender, so managing to accelerate, 4 cards in hand. Alright, last march of the Ents is very nice once we manage to empty our hand. So instead of the Maskwood Nexus, which should already be in play, let's go for our commander here. We can tap out into that. And that discovers on entry, so hopefully get into something decent here. If we get into another dinosaur, it won't discover again anyway. And it is a Felidar Guardian, so that's a particularly good one to take advantage of ETB effects. So let's go for flickering the Pantlaza, so that we can discover something straight onto the battlefield. When you flicker this, it enters again, and it does count as a different copy of Pantlaza, for lack of a better term, so we will get to discover again. So in it comes, and we'll get another permanent. And this time it's an Elemental Bond, again, good for the flicker shenanigans, as will most of the permanents be in this deck. And it looks like, unless we draw into something else here, we are going to have time to go for the Maskwood Nexus next turn. And Evolving Wilds is going to be another tap land for our opponent. More ramp, trying to get into the Dragon in the form of Celestia Signet this time. And then a Spectral Searchlight, don't know that one. Tap, choose a player. That player adds 1 mana of any colour they choose. Yeah, so obviously you're just going to choose yourself with that, you would imagine. Alright, Return of the Wild Speaker, so getting into nearly everything we need now. We'll hold on to the Boseiju, because we'll be able to cast it after the Maskwood Nexus. So let's go for that here. Argument to be made for the Return of the Wild Speaker, I suppose. We're still a couple of mana away from last march of the Ents. Could go for Eerie Interlude to trigger the Pantlaza again, so let's get down this Maskwood Nexus. And then I don't see much harm in swinging in here, so we'll hold back the 0-4 with Defender and hit our opponent for 5. Our opponent on 7 mana at the moment. Needs a couple more mana to get into the commander. Market Festival enchants a land, and that land taps for 2 mana in any combination of colours, so that is 1 piece of extra mana they need. Alright, there's a Dromoka the Eternal. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, bolster 2. So I think if we want to get up to something like last march of the Ents, we need to look at the Boseiju being played as a land. Don't think there's much point in blowing up any of these and just trading them out for a land with the Boseiju. Alright, we draw into a Wood Elves. That will come down as a dinosaur, of course, but the, what is it called? Not Explore. The Discover is only going to be for 1 on that, so not too worried about getting out the Wood Elves for Discover, although it might be worth it for the land. So what we can do here is play out the Wood Elves, simply for the land, like I said, and then we can go Return of the Wild Speaker and draw a bunch of cards. Maybe best doing that on our opponent's turn, though. So we might as well go for yes on this, and that gets us into a Swords to Plowshares, which can go onto the Dromoka. I'm fine with that. Obviously not too many 1-drops in the deck, so it's reasonably predictable what we could get into there. So yeah, just holding up Return of the Wild Speaker and our other instance, like I said. Could be worth going for the Eerie Interlude because we'll get 2 lands off the Wood Elves potentially if we want to flicker it with the Felidar Guardian. Although we have enough mana already for Last March of the Ents. Don't have too big a creature though, so leaning more towards Return of the Wild Speaker. That'll draw us 4 cards. It's not terrible for 5 mana. Be preferable to get into a really big creature before we go for the Last March of the Ents. That way we get to draw even more. And if our opponent manages to drop in an untapped land here, he will be able to afford the Dragon. Well, there's another scary one. Lathless Dragon Queen will generate a 5/5 dragon when another dragon enters. 1 card in our opponent's hand. And that means that the Bloom Tender now taps for 2 mana, so we're going to see the last card in our opponent's hand here. Lathless being activated. Not sure if they can give Lathless haste here, because that is just fire breathing for all dragons for 2 mana. But obviously not going to make use of that if they can't attack with it. Then activating Lathless again. Don't know if my opponent's not realising that it doesn't have haste. Alright, so going through to the end step, we will draw cards equal to the greatest power of a non-human. Oh, and that's a Nombo. God, we're both making mistakes apparently. Yeah, thanks to the Maskwood Nexus, they are human. Well, I think we're relying on Last March of the Ents to do a little bit of something then, although that's a bit more power for us, isn't it? So let's go for a Pugnacious Hammerskull then. Yeah, that's not a Nombo I've ever come across before. I always forget that this is non-human for a start. I actually remembered it this time. And then I hardly ever run Maskwood Nexus, so yeah, that is genuinely not an interaction that I ever think of. Elemental Bond, going to cantrip with the Pugnacious Hammer. There is a Farseek. Pantlaza will get us something big, hopefully. Gets us into a teleportation circle, so we can flicker the Pantlaza with that. Don't think there's any benefit of flickering the Felidar Guardian to flicker the Pantlaza. I don't think that really makes any difference. So if we're going to hold up Eerie Interlude and Beast Within, might as well go for the Farseek here. We can get the Tricycle landing. Could go for Beast Within now and swing into the 3/3 with our 4/4 Pantlaza, but don't think it really matters here. Our opponent's only got 1 card in hand. So we will flicker the Pantlaza because otherwise we won't get to discover again. Because we're still doing this during our turn and we can only do that once a turn with the commander. So in that enters we get an Elemental Bond and Pantlaza Discovery again. And draw into a Wall of Omens. The power on this is obviously 0, so won't be affected by the fact that it is a dinosaur. Alright, and allows us into a Bronzebeak Foragers, so that will actually deal with the Lathless, which means we don't have to go for the Beast Within if we don't want to. Not worthy we could Beast Within onto this, that gets rid of a nice chunk of mana for our opponent, but not looking to make plays like that if we don't have to. Just go after the Lathless with the Bronzebeak Foragers, and then drawing into another dinosaur in Scytheclaw Raptor, which is a creature with decent power as well, so we will just pass at that. Managing to get another land with Naya Panorama, so we expect to see the Dragon here. Okay, deciding to use the last card in his hand instead, that is Daragaz Reincarnated, a flying trampler with haste. If it would die, exile it with an egg counter on it, and then at the beginning of your upkeep trade out the egg counter for this, so it's basically a difficult creature to kill off. So if we're looking at going for Eerie Interlude anyway to make good effect of ETBs, maybe we could put Daragaz under the Bronzebeak Foragers instead. Plenty of mana generated by Bloom Tender now. Not sure what our opponent's aiming for. Doesn't have any cards in hand. Alright, so in the beginning of combat, now we can go for the Eerie Interlude. We'll just flicker everything here, I think is safe. Not bothered about our opponent getting the Lathless back if we can just go for Beast Within onto it. Now, I'm not sure how Magic Online is going to show us which creature we're discovering with, because we're going to get a lot of Pantlaza triggers, but we only say yes to one of them. So Pantlaza will not go back to the command zone. Oh, and this is yet another mistake. I'm not doing too well here, am I? The Eerie Interlude only brings it back at the end step. Yes, of course, it doesn't do it straight away, so giving our opponent some extra power for no reason from the Lathless. That will get an extra couple of power because they can only make red twice. So should have just taken the hit from the Daragaz and then flickered at the end of the turn. But don't think it matters, we were never going to stop the Daragaz from hitting us anyway. Alright, so taking a hit for 9, and here we go, going to get a bunch of Pantlaza triggers, so let's put everything else on the stack first. Might as well just get rid of the Lathless again then. I was trying to avoid damage from Daragaz at all. Felidar Guardian can flicker the Pantlaza so that we can get another Discover off that. Wall of Blossoms will cantrip. Wood Elves will ramp us. We have 3 triggers on the Elemental Bond, which means we draw 3 times. And then, like I said, I'm not sure how Magic Online tells us. Yeah, it doesn't tell us like the number that we're discovering, like the amount of power. Okay, yeah, it just highlights the creature on the stack. So it's this third one that we want, so we'll say no to the first 2. And now we're seeing Pugnacious Hammerskull, so say yes to that one. Alright, and there is a Flicker Wisp. This is actually relevant because the Felidar Guardian is not going to see Pantlaza once we've removed it from the stack, or removed it from the battlefield and brought it back in with Flicker Wisp. So here's something relevant with Discover. We'll say no to it, and that means that it brings Flicker Wisp into our hand. It's better than Cascade in that regard. And that means that we can obviously use that next turn if we want to. Drawing into some more mana. Wood Elves can bring in a tap land. And there's a Rishkar's Expertise as well, so really doing well here. Say yes to the Felidar Guardian so that we can do more Pantlaza stuff and draw a card. Alright, there's a Cultivate for some more mana, not against that. And it's noteworthy that we've drawn into a Resto Angel as well. And there we see a Generous Gift for the Darigaz if we like. So last March of the Ents can't be countered. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness amongst creatures you control. Then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. We've got a number of them already, so I think this is well worth going for. So here we are going to draw 6 cards thanks to the Pugnacious Hammerskull. And then it's any number of creature cards. Actually drew into a whole bunch of non-creatures there. But there is the Charming Prince, so put that on the stack first. Then we can go for Restoration Angel. We'll just be flickering our commander a bunch here, I imagine. The Tranquil Frillback can go on there as well. Just put all the creatures in play. Don't think it matters what order we put the flicker things in. We'll just dump all our creatures into play. And that will trigger a bunch of ETBs, as is intended with the decks. So Elemental Bond can go on and resolve last. And yeah, our opponent decides to scoop to that. All we're looking to do here, really, is we will flicker. Yeah, I think we say yes to the Pantlaza that will bring in a 4-drop or below. And then we can flicker Pantlaza with the Restoration Angel to trigger itself. And we'll do the same thing with the Flicker Wisp and with the Charming Prince. And then obviously there's a bunch of cantripping and stuff going on there. So yeah, getting a bunch of free spells with Discover is pretty damn good. Who knew? Some goofy plays there. We'll see if I can play a bit more clean in the next game. Up against Trelasara this time, and that is a good hand if we manage to get into a land, but no guarantee of that, so I'll have to give up on that hand. And yeah, this should be fine. Hopefully we'll just hope that we can actually get into some acceleration. Great Henge can go. Garruk's Uprising is our first card that we draw into, so let's get a tap land going. Draw into a Swords to Plowshares this time. Our opponent has played a Kazandu Nectarpot, landfall, gain a life, not too worried about that. Yeah, we want to be getting into lands and ramps, so scry 2 with the Charming Prince, and then it can always get flickered for more different flicker shenanigans like we saw in the previous game. So scry 2 is more lands here. I think we're fine to put both of them on top. We'll just have to go slow and hope our opponent does the same thing. And hopefully the Swords to Plowshares can buy us a bit of time. So the Telasara comes into play, and gaining a life straight away from that obviously interacts very well with the commander. We're hoping to get rid of the commander with the Swords to Plowshares. Although we could just get rid of this thing and hope that they can't find other means of gaining life. So obviously we know that we're drawing into the Castle Garenbrig. Maybe we should set up with some card draw on the Garruk's Uprising. Then we can maybe go for a scry with the Guardian of Gyrapor, because when that enters it'll flicker the Charming Prince. It will not trigger the Garruk's Uprising, unfortunately, because this cares about 4 power, as opposed to the Elemental Bond, but worth having in play because we will get our commander down eventually. Managing to make another land means that the commander is buffed again. And then we see Daxo, so definitely have other means of life gain now, so removing the Telasara is a good idea, I think. And deciding to hold up green mana means that they might have a means of instant speed hexproof. Take the 4 commander damage. Alright, so there we see the Arid Mesa. I think, yeah, let's go for a dual land with this untapped. And we're fine to go for the Guardian of Gyropor, I think, so that we can go for Scry with this again. And I think it's just Swords to Plowshares during our opponent's turn. If he has a means of hexproof, then we'd rather he was forced to cast it on his turn anyway. Guardian of Gyropor brings back the Charming Prince, and it is Scry 2 again. Alright, there's a Blasphemous Act and a Scalding Tarn. We've got mana enough for our commander at least, so maybe holding on to Blasphemous Act is going to be an intelligent idea, but I'll be optimistic and put both of these on the bottom. Alright, our opponent making a land means that that will get buffed even further. I know that they gain more life this way from the Swords to Plowshares, but I'd rather they tap out. It buys us an additional turn. And alright, their Sword of Body and Mind will make them equip that to the commander. And yep, they are going for the equip onto the commander, so now we can go Swords to Plowshares, and that buys us a nice chunk of time. Alright, Maskwood Nexus again. We need to be careful of those nombos that are in the deck apparently. We'll cast the Pantlaza. It would be nice to have an additional mana from some ramp at some point during the game so that we could have gone for Ephemerate straight away, but we will go for the commander here. Draw with the Garruk's Uprising as well. Alright, that gets us into Terror of the Peaks, which is excellent, so might be worth getting down the Maskwood Nexus first. See what we get here. That is a Curious Altasaur, so not going to trigger the enchantment, but could be some means of card draw for us, especially if this becomes a dinosaur. And casting the Maskwood Nexus allows us to hold up Ephemerate next turn as well, so could definitely be worth a go. Alright, so Trelasara not coming into play here, deciding to get down a flyer in the form of Archangel of Thune, gaining a life when that enters, triggers the Archangel of Thune itself and puts a plus counter on everything. So puts us further and further out of reach of Terror of the Peaks. They have another land to make as well, only one card in hand. So the interaction's doing nicely here. So we need to get a move on. Return of the Wild Speaker again with the Maskwood Nexus in hand. So yeah, maybe it's just worth going for Terror of the Peaks then. We'll draw a card with Garruk's Uprising and maybe it'll be a land that we can use Ephemerate with. Yeah, I can't go for Maskwood Nexus now that we've got the Return of the Wild Speaker in hand, so let's go Terror of the Peaks and hope that it doesn't get removed. Draw a card, wouldn't mind a land here. It is instead a Farseek, and we cannot swing in because our opponent has a flyer. Could have swung in previously with this, but Trelasara now entering play as well. A plus counter onto itself and onto everything else. Thanks to a creature entering, they do get to scry, which is obviously helping to fix their draws. And this will be an equip onto the Archangel of Thune, you would assume. Noteworthy that Daxos is a 5/8 now. Got a 4/6 Nectar Pot as well. So yeah, Sword of Body and Mind going on to the Archangel of Thune. Not sure we'll be able to get enough damage flying around from the Terror of the Peaks. This does have lifelink, so it will be further buffed. Could block with the Guardian, but I like the idea of Charming Prince and Guardian of Gyropor being able to flicker each other around and deal more damage from the Terror of the Peaks, so yeah, we'll just allow this through. Obviously means that we take a mill, and our opponent gets another creature into play though. Alright, let's see what our opponent managed to get here. A Trumpeting Carnosaur, some removal, yeah, some more removal in the form of a dinosaur, lands obviously. Scytheclaw Raptors, a Karma we couldn't have played anyway. Haven't done too well on the ramp front. But yeah, some good cards in all that. Alright, there is the Great Henge. So is that worth playing here? That would be 4 mana and tap for 2, meaning that we'd only have 1, 2, 3 mana left over. So probably not. Maybe it's just Return of the Wild Speaker and pray for a land. So then we can do Ephemerate stuff. When do these things come back in? Return to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. And this is at the beginning of the next end step as well. So they can bring each other in and out at the end of each player's turn, which doesn't necessarily help get rid of things like this. So we just need to get into some relevant things with the Return of the Wild Speaker and hopefully actually draw some cards this time. Alright, and there's only just getting into a command tower, so Apex Altasaur is nice, although we've got protection from green to worry about. So maybe we can do a block and flicker with the Guardian of Gyropor. So let's swing in with Terror of the Peaks. They don't have any reachers or flyers. Feels like you're kind of slowly chipping away at your opponent when he's gaining so much life, but it all counts, especially if our opponent gets into the artifact that is 40 life to deal 40 damage. Forget what it's called. It is noteworthy that with Ephemera it is flickered, so it will return to the battlefield immediately. Ajani's Mantra is at the beginning of the upkeep, gain a life, obviously lots of incremental life gains. A Lathiel sends our opponent down to 1 card in hand. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain life, distribute that many plus counters. They're about to gain a lot of life from the Archangel of Thune. Unless we can block and flicker something out of the way, that will get rid of the life gain damage, which is obviously what we're looking to do. Daxos is going to be a Soul Sister and trigger plus counters again. And again, managing to make a land. They've had absolutely everything they needed this game. So more plus counters, more scrying from the Trelasara. I think we're in board wipe territory here. I was cocky before getting rid of the Blasphemous Act and apparently shouldn't have done. But this makes for a fun game at least. So you'd think they'd turn in sideways with everything. I don't think they have to worry about the swing back particularly. So a couple of things swinging in here. Let's go through to blocks. Don't think we need to worry about the Curious Altasaur, so we'll just throw that in the way of Daxos. Charming Prince can go in the way of the Commander, and then Guardian of Garapor can go in the way of the Archangel of Thune. And we'll say OK to that. Then Ephemerate flickers the Guardian of Garapor out of the way so that there's no lifelink damage. Terror of the Peaks is going to Lightning Bolt something. Then we're fine to Lightning Bolt Lathiel. And then when it re-enters, we can flicker the Charming Prince out of the way here as well, so it survives. And there we've dealt no damage. Our opponent's Lathiel trigger goes on the stack first because it's his turn, and that is relevant here. Because Lathiel, can it put counters on itself anyway? Oh, it's other target creatures anyway, so he couldn't have saved Lathiel from the Terror of the Peaks that's about to trigger anyway, but Guardian of Garapor brings the Charming Prince back into play. Terror of the Peaks can get rid of the Unicorn. And then with Charming Prince, we can bring something back in at the beginning of the next end step, which, yeah, is a bit goofy because we want to keep Pantlaza in play during our next turn, so maybe just a Scry 2 would do here. Alright, there's a Solemn and an Ancient Tomb. Solemn on the bottom, not sure what we're doing next turn to be honest, but we'll just throw Ancient Tomb on top because we want as much mana as possible. Gain another life from Daxos because the Lathiel died. And they will still get the plus counters from Lathiel. Alright, so here we get a rebound on Ephemerate. So unfortunately can't play a creature into Pantlaza before this. But I don't see any harm in, if we're not going to swing in with Terror of the Peaks, then I suppose we can try and maximise the amount of card draw that we get. So go for the Garruk's Uprising. I suppose we would have drawn a card with Pantlaza anyway, so maybe should have just flickered that. Okay, there's a Mana Crypt, so we are accelerating ahead here. Play both of these. So let's see about getting the Great Henge into play. We can gain incremental life with that. And then we can go for the Castle Garenbrig, because that will gain us an additional mana if we decide to play a creature through it, which I think we're looking to do here. Unfortunately, a bit too late for the Apex Altasaur, but like I said, maybe we'll be able to get something good. So Pantlaza, Terror of the Peaks can deal 10 damage to something, or it'll actually be more than that by the time. Will this change on the stack? Suppose it will, won't it? Because we'll get a plus counter from the Great Henge. So let's just go after the Wolf token. Garruk's Uprising will draw, and then the Apex Altasaur should have put on the stack first, really, but we're not going to fight anything anyway, annoyingly. Just treading water here, really. And the amount was 11 there. I just saw on the stack when Terror of the Peaks, it does give you a little amount on Magic Online. And then we'll use Pantlaza's ability. That gets us into Atali. Excellent. If Atali doesn't get us back into it, nothing will. So Terror of the Peaks, that is going to be 8 damage onto something. And we might get creatures with the Atali, so I'll go after the Daxos here and hope that we can get into something like that. Draw with Great Henge and Garruk's Uprising. Atali is going to get us into some stuff. The Pantlaza can't get us into any more Discover abilities unless we get into something like a Karmic Guide. So Resplendent Angel will Lightning Bolt, will get a shock from the Karmic Guide as well. And we were milled previously, so we can reanimate something. Something like Aza Karma maybe. Could blow up the sword with that, so Karmic Guide into play. And the Resplendent Angel as well. Alright, so we've got 8 damage on the stack from Terror of the Peaks with the Atali. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 is enough to take out Daxos if we target with all of these. So yeah, we can see there it says the power is 4, so should deal 4 damage instead of 3 with the Resplendent Angel and Terror of the Peaks. And it does have 4 damage markers on it, that's good. Terror of the Peaks triggers from the Karmic Guide entering as well. Again, draw a card. And at Karmic Guide, yeah, as tempting as the Karma is, I suppose we could go for Bronzebeak Foragers. Trumpeting Carnosaur is tempting as well. Could discover with that and blow up some more of our opponent's stuff, but it's all reliant on what we discover into. So I think it's safer to just go for the Bronzebeak Foragers, to be honest. Alright, so that's more damage. Terror of the Peaks. That's going to be 4 damage. We'll just put it onto our opponent. Wow, really? And yeah, our opponent doesn't... I suppose he's got 0 cards in hand, actually. Doesn't fancy coming back from this. The Bronzebeak Foragers has done some work for us in these 2 games. Probably going to get rid of the Archangel of Thune with that. Any enablers from the commander that we can get rid of is really good because it just turns this into a big dumb idiot. And we can chump block for days, probably just chump with the Karmic Guide because it's going to go down next turn anyway. Yeah, shows how explosive the deck can be. Bit of luck involved there, but we did have a little bit of bad luck in the early game, not getting into mana. Drew into the Greater Good at the end there as well, so could have kept cards in our hand after that, and hopefully that would have kept us in mana. Luckily managed to jump up by 4 mana at the end there with the Mana Crypt and the Ancient Tomb, so I'm sure that made all the difference. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed this visit to the Flicker version of Pantlaza, one of my favourite decks that I've built in recent memory, so didn't play my best here, but like I said, hopefully you all enjoyed it anyway. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.